Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. As you know, I come on about 5 minutes before our official airtime at 7 p.m. to give you, Eastern time that is, to give you an update on some of the issues that we are facing here in America and certainly some of the issues that you're facing in Canada. And then at 7 p.m., we start with our guests. And we have some two great guests that are going to be with you this evening. First, I want to share something with you that I know would be of great interest to Americans as well as Canadians, but especially Canadian people. Earlier tonight, we tweeted out in regards to Canadian Bill C-18, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's Canadian content provisions in censorship bill C-18 summed up in one picture. And this is the picture right here that we posted all across our social media networks. We went on to say that in America, we are still free and intend to stay free. Those politicians in America who tried what you are doing will soon be indicted and prosecuted. We don't like communists. So I got a pretty good reaction from people around the North American continent, some from Europe, but one in particular I want to respond to. The person who responded to me in this particular case, I believe is a Canadian. I don't know, but whether he's a Canadian or American, it doesn't make any difference based on what he said to me. He was respectable, and I respect his opinions, but I do want to answer it. This individual goes on to say, the bill is poor policy, but that's a rather silly assessment of it. In other words, our assessment of the bill is silly. He goes on to say that C-18 attempts to funnel money from hot linking news aggregations to publishers, which fundamentally breaks with the architecture of the web. Bad, but nothing to do with communists or whatever. Now, here's my point, folks. Individuals like this and others who have these opinions, like I said, I respect. But what they don't understand is the totality of circumstances that are surrounding bills like this. Let me give you an example. In America, Joe Biden, some time ago, he decides that he wants to establish what was known as the Ministry of Disinformation. First time ever in the United States of America that the executive branch of this government decides they want to set up a czar, if you will, a monitor, if you will, who will check out all the information being spread around the internet in the United States of America. And it'll be the Biden administration who will decide what is disinformation. The irony of this is that we know in America that probably, and this is my view and my opinion, and believe me, the opinion of millions of Americans, is that the people that are sending out more disinformation than anybody on the planet are the people in government, whether that government be the United States of America, Canada, etc. I mean, our governments, I'll speak for America, we've always been in the business, if you will, of sending out disinformation for whatever reason. That's fine. That's good. But don't go passing laws that are going to do what? Hinder my free speech. Now, getting back to this particular individual who spoke about our assessment of C-18 being silly. Well, my question to that person would be, and if you're watching, I want you to hear this. What makes you think that somebody in your parliament woke up one day and said, you know what we ought to do? We ought to get a bill together that will kind of monitor, maybe even prohibit or censor the content coming in and out of Canada, whether it be live streaming or broadcasting. Now, you think somebody woke up one day and decided to do that? Or do you think that with the massive amount of communist Chinese agents coming in to the United States of America, Canada, and the rest of the free world, do you think, number one, that maybe, just maybe, some of these Chinese Communist Party members have had influence on our lawmakers, whether it be the United States Congress, which we believe has happened? One of our lawmakers was literally caught in bed with an agent. And how about your Canadian Parliament? And when you look at some of the other laws that are being passed that are looking to take people's land, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, my friend who responded to me, whether you're from Canada or America, you've got to know. And if you don't know, I think you ought to look up the philosophies or the policies of Marx, Lenin, and Stalin and the Chinese Communist Party. The two first objectives: destroy their religion and destroy their freedom of speech, take away their ability to communicate. So when you say in your response to me, well, what are you talking about? Basically, communist. What does communism have to do with it? At least that's how I interpreted it. That's what it has to do with it. Take a look at who controls the media in communist China, and take a look at who wants to control the media in your country. We took a look at who wanted to control the media in our country, and it lasted 15 minutes. So the fact of the matter is that, and again, I respect your opinion and response, but know one thing, that the Chinese Communist Party has infiltrated, at least in our view, based on information we have, not only in the government of the United States, in its institutions, whether they be industrial, whether they be educational, whether they be business, industry. Chinese communists are all over the place, because we in this country have Democrats who have embraced them. And if you don't think members of your parliament have not embraced Chinese communists, then you need to wake up. You need to wake up. I would say that as we have very good people in our United States Congress, you have a lot of good people in your parliament. What we both need in our governments are good people with courage, who are willing to stand up and speak out against Joe Biden here in America and the Democrat, quote unquote, my quotes, my position, Communist Party here in America, and the liberal communists in your country. Because in my view, based on what we see, this is exactly what has happened. People in the United States of America, in Canada, and in other places of the free world are in denial. You're in denial. If you don't believe for 1 minute that the Communist Party has not taken root in the United States and Canada and elsewhere in the free world, then you're living with your head in the sand. And in your view, who are Democrats in the United States of America who support the Democrat Party, you're supporting the Communist Party. And I would venture to say that if you are a liberal in Canada and you're supporting these liberals and these supporters of Justin Trudeau, then in my view, you're supporting the Communist Party. And you know what you're supporting? The demise of your country, the demise of the United States of America with regard to my country, and the demise of Canada. And let me tell you something, if Canada and the United States fall, then those of you who are watching in Europe and around the world, you're next. You're next. This is why we need to stand together as a free people, to work within the framework of the laws that God gave our founders, whether they be in Canada or the United States or other free countries. The gift of freedom and liberty is from God, not from any prime minister, not from any president, and therefore it cannot and will never be taken from us. So long as we are aware of what's going on around us and we tell it like it is. That's what we need to do, folks, to stand up, to be free, to be strong, to be courageous, and to send a real good signal to people in denial that they need to wake up. Because sooner or later, folks, you know what? In their view, I know the view of Democrats in this country, in their view, oh, they're coming for us, conservatives. They're coming for us, the Jesus freaks, the God-loving people. They're coming for us, and boy, they're going to get us. Well, one, they're not going to get us, but I'll tell you what, they're going to get you. That's right, they're going to get you. Because if they get us and we're gone, they're going to get you next. You will be enslaved to communism. I won't be. I will not be enslaved to communism, and the majority of people in the United States of America will not be enslaved to communism. And I venture to say the majority of people in Canada are courageous. They're God-fearing, God-loving people, and they too will not become enslaved to communism. I've said this all along, the Canadian people and the American people who have worked within the framework of the law on this continent is winning. You're winning, folks. You may see more of the victories here in America and less in Canada because of the news media, but you're winning. I can tell you we're winning because just yesterday, the United States Supreme Court, for example, ruled in favor of a postal worker who refused to work on Sundays. A lot of things are going on with regard to some of these companies and some of these employers refusing to let people of faith or take a day off to worship, etc. This postal worker went to war with the United States Post Office, and he won. The United States Supreme Court ruled yesterday also that affirmative action in this country has now been outlawed. Affirmative action is race-based promotion, race-based acceptance into colleges. In this particular case, it was. For years, we have lived under what we call the affirmative action rules and policies, meaning that you will be accepted into college or you'll be given some preferential treatment if you are a certain ethnicity. Whether it be black, white, or whatever, it doesn't make the difference. It was race-based. Supreme Court overturned that and said there will be no more race-based admission into colleges, etc. You will be admitted on what? On merit. Believe it or not, there are people in this country upset over that. Well, I mean, absolutely incredible, folks. Oh, we don't want people admitted on merit. If you're this color, that color, you should be evaluated and admitted on the color you are. I mean, this is unbelievable, isn't it, folks? Unbelievable. Of course, they argue that certain minorities in this country were not given a good education when they were young, and therefore they would be disqualified when they went to college. They couldn't compete with others of another race, etc. Whose fault is that? Parents, be a parent, wake up. Be a parent, wake up. It doesn't matter if you're black, white, indifference. You know, if your kid is going down the wrong path, it's your responsibility as a parent to get that kid on the right path. Get him a good education. But anyway, again, another win for those who love freedom and liberty. Shareholders at Disney are now speaking out against Disney properties. They said that they better stop pushing sex ed on kids because as a woke company, they're going to go broke. And I could go on and on and on of what's happening with regard to the victories we're having. We're having a victory this week in the military, where finally a congressman is speaking out against the woke agenda in the U.S. military. So, folks, speak up, speak out within the framework of the law, whether you're in the United States of America or whether you're in Canada, and you win and they lose. All right, I got a couple of guests on tonight. We're going to go to Patrick Allard, and I probably messed up his name. I warned him about that. Oh, he's saying no. Let's go. All right, Patrick. Patrick, how are you? Thanks for joining us.
I'm doing all right. Thanks for having me on here.
I did not mess up your name.
Yeah, there's about 20 different ways of pronouncing it.
Okay.
Name, so
thanks.
It's all good.
Folks, I'm going to actually let Patrick explain his background and where he's at, but he's one of those Canadian people who decided, parent, to stand up and speak out for his child. And what a journey he's had, and he's going to share with us tonight that journey. Patrick, it's all yours.
I don't know where to really start, but I want to comment on some of your monologue there. There's just been a report up here, Justin Trudeau saying he's going to find and punish the leaker, the whistleblower on the Chinese interference in our elections here. He also says that the interference, although it happened, didn't affect our elections. So I don't know, this guy, whoever leaked this information, should be applauded. And to the Supreme Court ruling, this is news to me. This is great because, you know, this is creeping into the schools where we're hiring teachers based on their race or their gender spectrum, whatever they're on. And it's only the kids that are suffering because we're not hiring the best candidates to teach our children. So maybe what happens in the States usually trickles up here. And I'd hope to see, we call it up here critical race theory, gender or equity, inclusion, and all that kind of stuff. And if there's a starting to end, I'm happy for that. Which kind of brings us to where we are today. And, you know, for the last 3 years, I've been known as one of Manitoba's a province in Canada up here, and been known as one of the main freedom fighters throughout all the lockdowns and the so-called pandemic. quickly on that, I was ticketed 17 times with 16 times with lockdown tickets, arrested twice, once for a Facebook post just simply asking to protest. Major crimes unit showed up to my house. These guys are supposed to be arresting drug dealers, child abusers, murderers, and they're here at my door for a Facebook post for simply just wanting to exercise my right to peacefully protest. So that's all weaving its way through the courts. And once you're involved in this community, you start to see all the other wrongs that are happening in the world. And one of the wrongs that was brought to our attention during the lockdowns was what's happening in the schools. All the children, and this happened in the States as well, were not allowed to be in class. So they were doing what's called distance learning. They were at home on a computer. The teacher was handing out the assignments and this and that. So what now happens is now the parents are in the classroom. The parents see what their kids are being exposed to, which none of us probably were aware. Not everyone is active enough in their kids' schooling to know everything that's going on. But now we started to see, like, what are they putting in front of our children? And I'm one of the lucky ones. My daughter has been in. She had great teachers this year, great school. So I'm blessed in that way. But there's other kids out there who are being bombarded with a whole bunch of inappropriate content around the kids. And this led me to getting calls and emails from parents and texts and what can we do? What can we do? Being somewhat of the lighthouse of the rights and freedoms in Manitoba. And let's run in elections. We had our school trustees. So we have the school boards up here. They have elected officials who represent the school boards, who represent the kids, the teachers. And there was the elections were in 2022, October of last year. And I ran, and I encouraged many others, about 20 other people put their names on a ballot. There's about 200 seats in Manitoba here, but we had about 20 people running, and we got about a dozen elected. So there's some people making changes. One of my friends, Francine Champagne, there's another French name. She ran on I'm going to say an anti-woke platform, and got elected by the people in her area. And this is great. We have a voice of reason on one of the school boards here in Manitoba, in Winnipeg, the capital of Manitoba. We can make a difference. She's obviously had a hard time. There's 9 people on that school board, so it's pretty well 8 against 1. Whenever something comes up on curriculum or what's happening in the classrooms, or with this Pride season that we're in the midst of. And it used to be a day, and it was a week, and it was a month. Now it's a whole season up here in Canada. I don't know if that's how it is in the States. And it's just bombarding children with this weird fetish of some sort of sexualized gender, and teaching kids that they can change sexes or sleep with who they want to sleep with, or play with each other. And they're teaching from 6-year-old and up. Well, Francine made some Facebook posts speaking against sexualizing children. I mean, who wouldn't want to speak against that? Well, her board members. And she actually was voted. We have the Public Schools Act in Manitoba that allows an elected official to be suspended for breaking their code of conduct, whatever that is. And she was suspended for 3 months without pay. She lost some other jobs because of all the negative media attention, saying she was against the LGBTQ community, and which she's not. She's just against sexualizing children. And she got suspended for 3 months without pay.
Patrick, I'm looking at some of these feeds, and the Americans watching, because this is so foreign to us that a free country would do this. Now, in the States here, the school board would no doubt be sued probably not only for damages from the school district, but each one of them punitive damages, and probably freedom of speech would be the one of the constitutional issues that would be brought up. Is there any? What is astonishing those of us in the States here, hearing all of this and hearing what you just stated, and I know you have a lot more to offer. Is there any redress in your country? I mean, can you do anything? I mean, I would suspect, and I'd ask you to answer this question because I'm watching what's going on here. Why don't parents en masse? I mean, not violently, but within the framework of the law, make it very clear to these board members that they're going to be tossed if they don't go by what the wishes of the people are. Do you have an ability to toss them before re-elections or to recall them? And if not, as you say, you get a majority of school board members like the one that you just mentioned that is against all this sickness, you guys would win. So the question basically is, what avenues can you go down to put an end to this nonsense?
Doing what I've done for the last 3 years. Speak up. You have to not be afraid to speak the truth. And there's no my truth or your truth. There's just the truth. We have to be able to speak the truth. We can't be scared of a ticket or, going back to the COVID stuff. There was a lot of people who wanted to stand up, but were afraid because they saw me getting dragged in the news, being ticketed, being arrested. I'm still alive, right? I may have been saddled with $35,000 worth of fines, but that's okay. That's just an invoice I'll deal with down the road. People are afraid of that. Same with the school boards. When I go and speak at a school board meeting, and I'll get to this, what happened there, we're dragged through the mud in the media, and I'm labeled and today in the Winnipeg Free Press, which is I think one of Canada's largest newspapers, distribution in the hundreds of thousands, I was labeled someone who stands against LGBTQIA plus rights. I don't stand against anybody's rights. I think we're all created equal in the eyes of God, and we should all have the same human rights that are, that are given to us, granted to us by God. No man gives us these rights, and I'm not. And this is why people are afraid to stand up, because they don't want to get dragged through the mud. They don't want to be turned on at their work. Francine stood up, and not only did she lose 3 months of pay and her ability to practice as an elected school trustee, she lost a few other private contracts that she had. She teaches French translation. She does translating for some of the universities up here, and she lost those jobs because she was dragged through the mud. And nobody wants to. I think that there you are. Nobody wants to be dragged through the mud. But what my message is, I'm still here. I'm still alive. Francine's still there. Francine's still alive. So that's what we got to do. When you see a wrong. And maybe this is the way I was raised. I had a great parents growing up. Maybe I'm a little, privileged in that aspect. But my dad always told me, when you see a wrong, you have to stand up.
Well, you were raised the right way. Look, I'm sure, I shouldn't say I'm sure, but I have reason to believe that some of these board members are watching, if not one, two. We've learned some members of your government watch this broadcast. And my message to these board members is that you people are sick. You people are really sick. And
they'll see it because I'll send it to them.
Yeah, they are sick. And if you ever attempted to pull something like that off in this country, this young man and people like him, parents like him, wouldn't pay the price you would. So find me now for saying something. All right. Send me your little ticket. All right. You can't do it because I'm in a different country. But I say that because my blood is boiling as a parent, as a citizen who believes in freedom and liberty. And how dare you do this to this young man and his family? You should be ashamed of yourselves. I tell you, I'd like to say a lot more, Patrick, but I'd probably get into trouble if I cross a line. So you go right ahead as I have a sip of coffee. And
we go
American patriots. I know you want a lot more said, but we know we got to use some wisdom here.
We take some of this stuff that the kids are learning in schools, and you see it in the States too, some of these explicit books that are being made available to children. And I don't know where this explosion of books comes from. 5 years ago, this wasn't a thing. But we have some parents here, myself included, we went to city hall meetings, we go to school board meetings, and we read excerpts out of these books that are presented to our children, and we're shut down because the writings in these books and the pictures in these books are deemed inappropriate. City Hall here, our mayor said that the content that was being read was inappropriate and it was against their decorum. But yet we're allowed to read these books to 6-year-olds if we put a wig on and some revealing underwear and dressed up in drag. But we can't read it at City Hall in front of adults. So like the world seems to be upside down up here in Winnipeg anyways.
Well, Patrick, in reference to what you just said, we've had similar problems here with school boards tossing parents out. The FBI actually went to school board meetings and allegedly labeled parents terrorists and all that. But I've got to tell you, it caused a national outcry, and it was the moms. It's amazing. You think politicians could get things done. Moms and dads got things done in this country. They began to toss school board members out. Some of them, school board members, were fined. Charges against parents dropped. FBI under investigation. Everything turned as a result of what you said earlier. People need to stand up and speak out. Now, in reference to that, have you any legal representation? I mean, I'm trying to wrap my arms around all this that's going on. There's got to be some legal remedy here for your rights.
So our legal system in Canada is quite slow. If I sue someone, it could take 3 years before we're in court. In the States, like back to COVID, you guys have already had Supreme Court decisions on some of these COVID measures. We're still at the lowest court level here in Canada. Like, things take time, and it's an expensive process because it takes so much time. And with the rising cost of everything, and it's not easy to afford a lawyer. But I'm involved in a couple constitutional challenges regarding COVID. I've done okay for myself over the years. I'm not rich, but I've been smart, I guess, with my finances over the years and planned for the future. So I have a few constitutional challenges ongoing there. We have another political party here. You mentioned the Liberals. Well, they're basically part and parcel with, we have a new Democratic Party, the NDP up here. They're about as left as you can get. And they put out a press release calling me a racist. So I'm now suing them for defamation. But this is taking a while. When it comes to the schools, Francine is definitely, we've got her in contact with some good lawyers up here, and she's weighing her options on what to do there. But we do have other free legal avenues that I've taken with this school board. The school board is Louis Riel, LRSD, Louis Riel School Division in Winnipeg. And at this meeting we went to, there was other things that happened, but one of the things was one of the school trustees, Chris Sigurdsson, calls me a terrorist. And because I simply asked a question about how we can have the meeting go along. And for Chris Sigurdsson's also a lawyer. He's a criminal defense attorney up here. And lawyers have to follow the Law Society rules. So I filed a complaint with the Law Society, and lawyers hate that. I've made a complaint to the school board for that. So it's small little things that we can do that are free. But we have to take those steps. A lot of people just go to Facebook and complain, or they might share or like. But you got to do things. You got to call your elected representatives. You got to, when someone calls you a terrorist or a racist, you have to take action against them.
The terrorists of the 21st century.
I told you on the phone, if you ask the media over here or the school board, this was our version of January 6th, what happened at the school board meeting.
Absolutely incredible. When the government agencies or officials call its citizens terrorists, the government then becomes the home of terror. Here in the United States, we've seen that over and over again. In Washington, D.C., it's coming to an end, thank goodness. But it's sad. It's sad because parents should never be called terrorists when they're defending the destiny, the future of their children. Believe it or not, we're running out of time. I got to have you on again, but let me ask you this question. We'll spend a few more minutes. Where are you now with your efforts in fighting for your children? And obviously, you're fighting not just for your child, but for probably every child in that school district.
For the whole province, really, the whole country, I guess. Tomorrow's the last day of school for most kids, so thankfully they'll get the summer off. We have 2 months off here for summer, and then school starts up in September. Where am I? I'm going to be at the very first school board meeting of that Louis Riel School Division. They do say that they're not going to let people in, so we'll be in the parking lot. Like I said, my daughter was very lucky. Especially during COVID, she was the only kid in her whole school of 600 that never wore a mask. And people asked me, how'd you do that? I just went and talked to the principal. Me and my wife spoke to the principal, the mom. When the mom's there, we got the powers there, and just said our daughter doesn't wear a mask. And the rules up in Canada when it came to COVID was ridiculous compared to the States. I have friends that went to the States and they said they felt free the whole time. Where we're going to go, there is no recall legislation in Canada. And I'm not a fan of it anyways. I think if we want to vote someone out, we could do it in 4 years. So the elections will be in 2026 again. And I'm encouraging all the good parents to not only run, but support the people who are running. When you see a like-minded freedom, common sense type individual who doesn't want sex in schools or this weird sex in schools, to support these people who are standing against it, go to the board meetings and hold these people accountable, hold their feet to the fire. And
it works. Understand this. It works. It's worked here. And we were up against tremendous power brokers. And believe me, in fact, one power broker in New Jersey was actually defeated by a truck driver. Think about that, folks. Truck driver decides to run for the New Jersey Senate, and he defeats a very powerful individual. You're right, Patrick. Moms and dads come together and fight for what's right. And as I said, and I will say all along, they lose and we win. All right, Patrick, we're going to wrap it up. Any last words to all of the viewers? And I'm going to have you back on again in the near future because we got a lot more to talk about.
Well, I didn't know that there was a trucker that won, but as a Canadian here and part of the freedom protests, I'm going to have to take a little credit for that one because we put truckers on the map up here in Canada during our...
You put truckers on a map worldwide.
Right? So at that point in time, if any trucker was going to run, he was basically a shoo-in. So we're going to have to take a little tiny bit of credit for that. But other than that, just keep fighting and get involved in politics. They told us when we were growing up, 3 things not to talk about: politics, religion, and sex. But those are the 3 things that they never stop talking about. So we have to talk about those things again. We have to hold these people accountable, showing up at board meetings, filing complaints when necessary. Hey, I'm okay with free speech, but these elected officials can't be running around calling people names that they just disagree with. And yeah, just don't back down. Don't look at me. I'm still here. 3 years of crap, and I'm still breathing. So
and you mentioned religion as one of those, and we need to get on our knees at times and pray. And that's another thing we did here in the United States. We got all of these moms and dads and people together, and we called upon our pastors to lead us in prayer. And believe me, that's how we win.
We have our Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. This is somewhat to your Constitution. And the very top line says, Canada is founded upon principles that recognize the supremacy of God.
There you go. Beautiful. What a way to end it. Thank you. God bless you. By the way, happy Canada Day, okay?
Correct. Happy Canada Day, yeah.
And you being on this broadcast and speaking to all of these people globally now, that is going to make a lot of people in Canada happy on that special day. Patrick, thank you.
And I'll talk to anyone and I'll help anyone.
We'll be in touch. God bless you. Job well done. Proud of you. Thank you. Wow, what a guy, folks, huh? This guy is humble and he's calm and he's the kind of individual that is fighting a good fight of faith. So we're going to keep him in our prayers. Now, there has been a request, all right? Made a little change tonight. A request, if I could get it on, to bring Pastor Lee back. Remember, he had talked about prayer and he talked about the need for us to come back to God some time ago. We recorded that broadcast and people wanted to hear it again. So I'm going to play that broadcast. And then after Pastor Lee is finished, I'm going to come back on for a few minutes. But before I do that, folks, this is what I'm going to ask you to do. I'm just going to do this until maybe the end of July. First of all, thank you. Thank you for those of you who responded to our request to help finance what we're doing. We get no corporations. We get no politicians. We're not getting any donations from anybody, but from the people, of the people, and by the people. So we are able to do the work we're doing. And it's just not this broadcast. I mean, we got so much work we're doing with regard to drawing up plans and policies and proposals and information and intelligence, critically important to the work that we're doing with regard to Canada. And we're staying focused on that, even though we've got a lot of problems in America, as you know. I made a promise to you, and I'm going to keep that promise. So we want to keep it up. We want those letters. There's thousands of them. We've got thousands of them, folks, and they're still coming in, but we're going to need more. Okay, so remember, the SOS letters are critically important, but we also need to be in a position we're going to be able to fulfill the obligations that we are committed to. And it's costing a ton of money. But I'm not whining or complaining, because I believe that God will touch the hearts of people to help us, meaning you and me, sustain our fight for freedom and liberty. The great thing about you donating and others donating is that we don't have a collar around our necks and a leash attached to it by some political party or politician or corporation. We could do exactly what we are doing, and that is fighting for freedom and liberty. So there's the PayPal me link. It's probably the quickest way you could do it. If you can't get to the PayPal link for some reason, or you want to use a credit card, and I'll run this. You could go to that, thepatriotdesk.com, to donate, and you could do it via credit card. But any amount, I don't care if it's $1, folks. Those dollars add up. I mean, we're just in such an important, critical stage right now. I want to make sure we could fulfill this obligation. All right, let's bring Pastor Lee on. I hope this works, and then I'll be back when he's through. Thank you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining me again this evening. In the United States of America, it's National Prayer Week. And we've on this broadcast have always said to our audience worldwide that we're not only a secular broadcast that delivers news and commentary and opinion on the geopolitical problems and challenges we have around the world, but we also bring the spiritual aspect of what we need to do in order to secure freedom, liberty, peace, and prosperity. So there's a lot more involved in this fight for freedom and liberty and the things we want than just politics and military might, etc. But there's something called prayer. There's something called seeking God, Jesus Christ, for the help we need. So I have a great guest on. I'm going to bring him on right now. A great guy that I've known for a few years. His name is Pastor Lee. And Pastor, thanks so much for joining us this evening.
Of course, pleasure's mine.
Well, I'll start off, Pastor, if you could please familiarize our audience with who you are, where your church is, and what you're doing now with regard to actually building a wonderful, beautiful congregation there in Montclair, New Jersey.
Thanks. My name's Pastor Lee Grzywinski. I am pastor of the Montclair Community Church, which is in Upper Montclair on Watchung Avenue. As we like to say, community is our middle name, and our church is built on the community that we have there. It is not a one-man show by any stretch. I am just one of the gears in the machine there. We have a wonderful congregation of people who love God and who have a heart for others outside of our building. So God is doing a wonderful work there, building us up because of the love that he's given to the entire congregation, for the lost, for the world, for our country, and for Montclair.
You know, I guess about a month ago now, I've been so busy traveling around. My wife and I had come to your church service, and it was wonderful. I mean, from the second we stepped foot, not into church, but on church property, we were welcomed like we were family. Yeah. And I've got to tell you, what a comfortable, peaceful event to go to. I call it an event. It's really, church service, but to go to when you're facing so many problems in the outside world and every day in and out, bad news and all stuff, all kinds of things coming down upon you. But it was a pleasure being there. So I certainly give you kudos to your leadership and what your church is doing. Pastor, I've asked you to come on tonight because, as I said, it is National Prayer Week here in the United States. We do have thousands of people from Canada and many from Europe also tuning in, as well as obviously in our country. But there's two things happening with me. I get hundreds of letters a month, literally hundreds of letters a month from people who share with me their distress, the pain that they're suffering inside themselves with regard to the bad news, the media, the politics, the hatred, the fighting they see on the internet. They pour their hearts out, and they seem to have got to a point where they're so distressed they don't know what to do. And then on the other matter, when I go out and make speeches, and I'm talking about political speeches, I kind of adopted what Ronald Reagan did. I added scripture to some of the speeches, in fact, all of them that I make. And interesting enough, every place I went to, people will always come up and say, oh, good speech, good job. But what I found as a common thread, many of those people would come up and say, out of everything you said, it was what you said about the Bible, what you said about Christ, what you said about the scripture. And I learned through that there is a hunger and thirst across this planet for Jesus Christ. So could you share with all of these people right now that hope is not lost, but that there is hope in Christ? And I asked you to do it because, I prayed, I did. I said, Lord, who shall I ask to come on? Well, you know what? The Holy Spirit gave me that instruction, and you actually took up that call. And I thank you for that.
Of course. Yeah. And there is hope. I think the problem for many, many people is that in the Western world over the last few decades, we've made strides, and we understand that it's more than physical health. There's a focus on mental health, a focus on emotional health. And I think that what happened through this pandemic, that we were all locked away for so many years, we realized the relational health is such a big part of that. So now, even in the public square, in the public schools, and in the media, you see this understanding of the holistic nature of man, that we are physical, we are mental, we are emotional and relational beings. But we're missing a big part of that because the spiritual is still hands off in the public square. And this is why so many people feel they feel that they're missing something, but don't know what it is. And what they're missing is that spiritual aspect to their lives. And without being whole people, we lose hope. And so the hope is in Jesus Christ. The hope is in God and a relationship with him. And prayer is so needed right now in our country. It's so needed for everybody. And this isn't on my part a political push to say put prayer back in school. Look, we're teaching partial children when we don't teach them about the spiritual. We are a society full of partial people when we don't have a spiritual side. So we need prayer because we need to get back to being whole people the way God designed us to be, because that is where we find our hope. When we find God and we turn to him in prayer, we not only find him and the hope he gives us, we find what we were meant to be, how we were created to be. So we need prayer. We need to get on our knees and turn to God and ask him to make us whole people, because partial people can't fix a broken society. We can't fix a broken world. Only God can do that. And until we're whole people turning wholly to God, we can't expect much to change. Like I like to say to people in my congregation, if you don't change anything, nothing's going to change. And on the surface, that sounds so kind of dumb, of course. But yet we've been trying to make changes for how long now in our world to turn away from the brokenness and from the danger that's out there, legitimate fears that people have of what's out there. What needs to change? We need to turn to God. The change needs to be a change that happens in our prayer closet, on our knees, praying to our Lord.
Pastor, to your point, we've had some pastors from Canada on, and I understand one from America has just been arrested for praying at a public meeting. The pastors in Canada literally during the church service, and we have the videos where actually behind the pulpit preaching when the police actually stormed the church and attempted to drag him out. He's won some court cases, etc. But my point is this, is that there seems to be an attack on the Judeo-Christian values, on the Christian church. And of course, people would say to me, well, what can we do? You hear people want to rally, they want to do all sorts of different activist things, which is fine. But I share with them that, I've come to a point where I believe, and this is right to your point, that the best thing, the most powerful thing we could do is pray. People seem to think, well, prayer does nothing, but I happen to believe it does everything. And the battle for freedom and liberty, the battle for getting our governments restored to where God is supreme, is on our knees in the church and at home. My question to you is, do you believe? I believe you do, but maybe you could help me emphasize this, that, I once heard a minister say that the tallest person in the world is the one on their knees. But the power of prayer, if we could talk about that a minute, the power of prayer, we see it throughout the Bible, how powerful it is. But today, people are taking prayer and saying, well, I'll say a prayer or two, but what sense does it make?
Yeah, unfortunately, many, even Christians, true believing Christians, we tend to look at prayer as a wish list, that we come to God and we say, God, please do this. God, please give me this. And it's usually a last resort. When someone we love gets sick, when we're in danger of losing our job, we turn to God and say, God, please do this good thing for me, or give me this good thing, or don't let the bad thing happen. But prayer is really so much more than that, according to the Bible. It is a relationship that we have with God. It isn't just about coming before him and asking for things. It's about coming to him as the supreme being, as the one who can change things that we cannot change, and being in communion with him. And prayer does change things. And the problem is, I think a lot of times prayer doesn't change things the exact way we want them to change things. We often come to God with a 10-point plan of, God, I want this, and then please do this, and then please do this. And I think we miss a lot of times what God is doing, because he's not doing things our way. But I thank God he doesn't do things our way. I also thank God that one of the things that prayer changes immediately is the prayer. There is an air of divisiveness in our country. I'm sure you've noticed. I think everybody's noticed. And when you come to somebody with an opposing view, the standard now is, oh, that's an enemy, and we're going to fight about it, and I'm going to accuse them, they're going to accuse me. It usually degenerates into name calling and all these other things. But what happens is, when we pray, when we say, God, I don't like what's going on in this particular aspect of our society, and we get on our knees and we pray, not just for that, but for the people. Say, God, I pray for those people who are thinking this is good when your word says it's not. I pray for these people who have just accepted this air of divisiveness. God, I pray that you would soften their hearts, and that you would soften my heart towards them. And you'll find, when you pray for these people on the other side of the political fence, of people from different denominations, if you're a Christian, just the guy across the street who you keep arguing with, when you pray for these people, God changes you. And you were able better then to communicate with these people. Their defenses go down when you come at them lovingly, as opposed to coming at them with a challenge. And when you pray, God softens you to them and them to you. And that's a major hurdle, I think, in making progress on a lot of issues.
With regard to progress, there are many people, perhaps again around the world, who are very concerned about their children going to public schools. Our governments are leaning so far to the left that we've seen in some countries, and now in America, an influence of atheism and communism, again targeting Christians and those of the Jewish faith. But I find something that maybe we need to do, and I'm going to ask you about this. Our public schools, of course, are worldwide, are not teaching about God, about Christ, about prayer. A lot of what we learned in school is not being taught there. You mentioned prayer in school. But I tend to believe that, we need to get involved politically, and God's called some of us to do that, and to get legislation changed, and to vote for people who are going to support the Judeo-Christian values in which we are raised upon. But I tend to believe that perhaps the most powerful way to fight that fight is at home. Our parents teaching our children about the Bible, about biblical principles, the stories of Moses and David. I mean, those aren't just fantasy stories or fairy tales. They're real life stories. So the need for parents to understand that they, in this day and age, in this 21st century, have a grave responsibility to do that. But my question to you is this, and maybe you could answer it through what you're doing in your church, because I've seen what you're doing, and it's really magnificent. There are parents who will say, well, where can I go? What can I do? Where can I learn? I, as a parent, don't even know where to start. So when you run into a situation like that, where do you guide them?
I think it's very important, as you said. I just want to second what you said. I think it's been forgotten that as parents, we have the responsibility for teaching our children, for raising our children, and just dropping our children off at the public schools and saying they'll do it is, I think, a failure on our part. And I think that it started with my generation. I would say I'll take partial responsibility for that. We, I think, forgot that it's our responsibility to educate our kids. But to your point, parents need to know the truth if they're going to teach their children the truth. And it's very important for families together to study the word together, to pray together. You form no more an intimate bond with somebody than you do when you pray with them. But for parents, there are great, and it's not a plug for my church, there are great communities of faith out there. There are great communities of faith right here in northern New Jersey, where there are people who will love you for who you are and bring you along in your faith walk. Christianity was never meant to be a solo project. So as adults, what we need to do, especially when we have children, I'll be honest, it was the fact that we had children that made me seriously consider what I was doing and where my focus was in life that drew me to God. So we need to, as parents, as adults, we need to take very seriously the truth. Because what's getting lost, I think, in a lot of legislation, what's getting lost in a lot of teaching in public schools is truth. So there are great communities of faith that we can go to, be together with other men and women of faith on Sunday mornings, be together with them during the week. There are groups that get together at our church and all these other churches. And it's not sit down and hardcore Bible study and, I don't want to do that because, it's too over my head. It's about being together. It's about sharing each other's burdens. It's about becoming part of a community that cries with you when you're sorrowful, that celebrates with you when you're joyful. We can't do this alone. And a big part of that is coming together with our brothers and sisters in Christ, getting on our knees together and praying for each other. Doing it alone it's a horrible thing. And I think experience would tell most people doing it alone leads to failure. So getting involved, and I mean involved, not just showing up a couple times a month to a worship service. I mean, getting involved with the people that are there, the people that love you, the people that want to help you along in your walk and to understand God's truth better. There are people out there who want to support you in this. So get involved at a good church.
Pastor, I remember years ago, I met with numerous pastors around the state of New Jersey, some in Florida, Texas. And sometimes a pastor would say to me, well, what can we do for you politically? What can we do to help with legislation? What can we do to help make change in our state or our country? And I would share with them this, and I was a little stunned over one answer I got from one pastor some time ago. I said, you know what? The best thing you could do is to talk to your congregants about sin, about the need to get away from sin and how to deal with sin. Because, in our fight for freedom and liberty, I believe the first fight needs to be the fight for the soul, for the spirit, and you fight sin. But that pastor actually said to me that, well, if I start talking about sin in my church, they're going to leave. And I was kind of stunned over that. Then I looked around and I realized as time went on, a lot of churches are empty today. Now, one thing I saw about your church that I actually commented to my wife, I said, could you believe there's people here? This place is really, really well attended here. And then when you began to speak and you spoke from the Bible, I said, there it is. There's the answer. So my question to you is this, regarding pastors. I get a lot of letters from people saying, look, I go to church and you know what, there's nothing there to be convicted about. I remember going years ago, I heard some of these preachers. I said, wow, I said, man, I better get back here because I got some serious problems in my life. So I'd like to talk to you about that a little, that the battle being in the soul. We talk about the battle for freedom and liberty all the time, right? Individual rights all the time. But how about that battle for the soul? Because I don't believe a lot of people really know that there is a fight going on right now for their souls and their spirits.
There is. There definitely is. And in any case, people who don't know that they need help usually won't accept help. And so when we in the church, especially as pastors from the pulpit, when we give the good news and we talk about the salvation that Jesus brings, well, salvation from what? What do we need to be saved from? And so it's really important, especially in the church. And I think that we, by and large, have failed in the last few decades. It's important in the church to talk very openly and honestly about sin. I'm not afraid to tell people, look, I know I'm broken. I know I need fixing, and I know I can't fix myself. And people need to hear that they're broken and that they need fixing and that it's only God that can fix them. Nobody likes to be told they're wrong. I know I don't. So when people talk about sin, they feel like, well, I'm going to tell this person they're wrong. And this is part of that, just that spirit of the age where you can't tell people they're wrong because then you're being divisive and then you're trying to just preach morality. That's not what it is. Sin is part of who we are. We're broken creatures. We need God to make us whole. And I think that if that gets lost, people don't care about being saved unto God if they don't know what they're being saved from. And it's so important for us to take very seriously the reality of our sin, the reality of the fact we can lie to others. I can tell you, I look down on this person for doing that, and I don't do that, and I don't do this. You know what? When it's just me alone in my bedroom, the door closed, I know deep inside things I've thought, things I've said, things I've done. I don't let anybody else know about them, but God knows. And that's what we need to be saved from. We need to be saved from our sin. And it's so important that message is told to people. It's not going to be popular, but God doesn't call us to tickle the ears, right? We're not here to tell people what they want to hear and not tell them what they don't want to hear. We just want to tell them the truth. And the truth is that we are all, even the most holy Christian you could think of, we're all sinners who need God.
Pastor, before we wrap things up, as I said, there are thousands of people in Canada, and I won't go over the specifics with you. We don't have enough time, but I would say they need prayer. They needed to hear what you said today, as well as people in our country. It's just the oppression, the spiritual depression people are facing. But I believe you lifted me up. You lifted me up tonight. So that I certainly appreciate. Any last words before we leave?
I just want to circle back to one thing I've said a few times. This comes down to truth. There may be people out there who think this whole God thing, this whole Bible thing just isn't true, and they have their ideas of what's true. But funny thing about truth is that whether you believe it or not, it is true. And I just encourage everybody, seek what the real truth is. Because when you come to a knowledge of what the truth is, it points you right to God, and God meets every need.
Well, Pastor, you've been a blessing to me and my wife. You're going to see us soon. We're going to be back in the area. We're going to come back to your church. We love coming there. And I don't know how to thank you other than say I'll put you on my prayer list. And I pray that God does great things for you because you were a godsend. At this point in time, in our country, I know in Canada and those around the world, seeking something. And you gave them not something, you gave them everything in what you said. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for sticking with us. Boy, did he give us truth. Now, breaking news, folks, out of New Jersey, as you were listening to this video, another big win for freedom and liberty. Listen to this one. The New Jersey Supreme Court has ruled that the government will need wiretap orders for real-time social media posts, not just search warrants, meaning this, that if the government decides that they want to wiretap this broadcast for whatever reason, or any communication between you and somebody else, they're going to need a court order. But here's the gist to it. They just can't go in and say, well, we want to monitor or surveil this particular communication. They have to articulate a reason, what's called probable cause. They have to prove to a judge that there is reason to believe that a crime is going to be committed. and they're going to have to show proof that they have that probable cause. Now, before this happened, apparently there were shenanigans going on, at least in my view. There were shenanigans going on, and perhaps government officials were just deciding, well, we're going to violate the rights of the people and we're just going to listen in on them. They cannot do that anymore with regard to social media posts. So that is a big, big win for people that are standing up for freedom and liberty. And to the point of tonight, folks, we win when we work together and we become a strong voice, not only a strong voice to governments that have tyrants leading them, but a strong voice to God, a strong and powerful voice individually and together to God Almighty to continue to guide us and to use us to preserve the gift that he gave us so that we could pass on to our children and grandchildren the gifts of freedom and liberty. So that's it, folks. I want to, again, just ask if you could consider sending us a contribution so we do stay on the air and that we do continue the work we're doing. PayPal.me at Campaign for America, and also our website. That's one of two websites. Website you could send a donation through via credit card. To those of you in Canada, I want to wish you a happy Canada Day. Now, I know a lot's going on up there, but keep in mind, the government fears you as our government fears us. We don't fear them. They fear us because you're working within the framework of the law. You're doing things right and proper. You're doing things through the prayer that God answers with regard to wisdom. So you just keep that in mind. So I know it's easier said than done, but we've been there in America. We're still there to a great degree, but we're still fighting. And remember what I always say. Look at that. You see that flag back there? It's waving. Isn't that something? That's happened a couple of times. It's waving. Your flag and this flag represent not only to the Canadian people and the American people, but represent to people worldwide symbols of freedom and liberty. We're leading the charge here in North America. The Canadian people are leading the charge. The American people are leading the charge. We are becoming perhaps Reagan's expanded shining city upon a hill. So I thank you for joining us. God bless you. Happy Canada Day. You got a great, great reason to be happy. And happy 4th of July, Independence Day here in the United States of America. See you all next Thursday. And again, boy, I sound like one of them telethons here in America, where they want to raise money. Again, just consider helping us out. Thanks so much. God bless you. I'm Lieutenant Stephen Rogers.